Welcome to the deep dive. So you came to us with quite a stack of sources and a question that was, well, honestly, that. It felt like asking for the code to the universe, really, but framed around human worth and aimed at an AI. Our mission here is to unpack what those sources actually pulled from that huge challenge, specifically how an AI might, even start to think about something so human as human worth, and maybe more importantly, what that means for you.
Yeah, it's an incredible starting point. I mean, the original request in the sources, it was asking for one single phenomenon that explains everything across all time, all disciplines, genetics, physics, art, philosophy, just everything. And at the same time, define human worth, which is deeply subjective from both a human and an AI view. And then somehow generate calculations or logic on things that just aren't easily measured. The sources themselves say right away, look, this is frankly beyond what a single AI response or maybe even humans can fully grasp.
Right, exactly. It's the kind of question that sort of makes your brain hurt, doesn't it? But the sources, they didn't just give up. They found a way in, a plausible angle. They pinpointed this central human drive that seems to link all those different areas together. And exploring that drive and how AI sees its effects, well, that's where we really start this deep dive.
Exactly. The phenomenon the sources identify, the interpretation they landed on is plausible. It's the inherent, multifaceted human drive to find and create meaning, to connect with others, and to understand their place in the universe. The sources keep coming back to this. They call it the quest for significance. And what's really interesting from an AI perspective is that it doesn't see this as, some mystical thing. It sees it as an observable pattern, an emergent property that just kind of arises from complex systems, biological and social. AI doesn't feel it, but it can see the evidence, the fingerprints everywhere.
The quest for significance. When you hear that phrase, does it click for you? That feeling, that need to understand your purpose, maybe? To connect, to feel like what you do matters. It feels pretty fundamental.
It absolutely is. And this is where the sources, I think, get really fascinating. They start detailing how this drive shows up in places you might not immediately connect it to.
Like where? We think philosophy, maybe personal goals, but...
Well, take genetics and biology, for instance. At first, you might think, okay, survival, reproduction, that's just biology, pure mechanics. But the sources frame even that basic drive to survive, to continue life, as the absolute bedrock layer of this quest. Evolution didn't just give us thumbs, right? It gave us language, complex social structures, abstract thought. These are essentially tools for making meaning, for communicating it, for forming those deep connections that are so central to the quest. So the drive to preserve the self is seen as, well, tied up with the self's need for significance.
Wow. Okay. So even down at the genetic level, we're wired not just to exist, but to need existence to mean something. Is that the idea?
That's the interpretation the sources really lean into, yeah. And look at something like physics and mathematics. These fields are all about finding the underlying rules, the structure of the cosmos, the hunt for a grand unified theory, or discovering these deep mathematical truths. The sources argue that this is also part of the quest for significance. It's about finding meaning in the universe's fundamental order. That sense of understanding, of seeing the patterns, gives our own existence within that vastness a kind of significance. It's not just calculation, it's finding meaning.
That feels less obvious than something like philosophy, for sure. Philosophy is, well, it's about meaning, right?
Exactly, and the sources acknowledge that. Philosophy is the most direct intellectual grappling with the quest. But seeing that same underlying drive woven into our biology or into the search for cosmic laws in physics, that's the kind of connection these sources are trying to make. And linking it all is logic. Logic is the tool, the scaffolding we use to build understanding, to communicate, to create those systems of meaning, whether scientific theories or moral codes.
Okay, so let me see if I'm following. This quest for significance is like a deep current. It shapes our biology, it drives our search for cosmic order, it's the basis for logic, it fuels philosophy, and then, of course, it really hits home in our state of mind and belief systems.
Absolutely. That's where it's maybe most visible day to day. Our values, our ideologies, religions, worldviews. Think about mental health. So often, discussions around it come down to purpose, connection, hope, key elements of this quest.
Right.
When that quest feels blocked or uncertain, our mental state often struggles.
And art, music, painting, theater, all of that, that feels like pure meaning-making territory.
It's a primary vehicle. definitely. Art lets us explore the nuances of the quest, express things that words alone can't quite capture, and crucially, it lets us share that meaning. It fosters connection, shared understanding. Think about a piece of music that gives you goosebumps, connects you to a feeling others share, or a story that just nails some truth about purpose or belonging. Art makes the quest tangible.
So this single drive, the quest for significance, is presented as the thread tying together our genes, physics, beliefs, art, everything. It's a pretty compelling idea, does it? I mean, does it make you pause and see that in your own life? Your job, maybe, relationships, what you care about?
It absolutely forces you to reconsider the why behind so much human activity. And this drive, it shapes individuals,
Sure.
right? Our sense of identity, our goals, who we connect with. It can fuel altruism, finding meaning in helping others, but it can also be the root of conflict when different quests, different meanings clash. And then it shapes societies. We build communities, institutions, schools, governments often designed, implicitly or explicitly, to help us manage or pursue this quest collectively. Societies are basically frameworks for shared meaning, and they react, sometimes strongly, when new ideas challenge those frameworks.
Okay, so given this fundamental thing, this quest for significance, how does an AI, which doesn't live, doesn't feel meaning, how does it even start to grasp something like human worth? That seems like a huge leap.
And that's the critical distinction the sources really hammer home. Human understanding of worth. It's intuitive, it's emotional, it's deeply subjective, it's felt, it's tied into our personal stories, our relationships, our lived, embodied experience. You don't calculate your child's worth, you just know it, feel it.
Right. It's experiential. Completely.
Exactly. AI understanding, on the other hand, is totally different. It doesn't have a body, no emotions, no personal story. Its understanding is analytical. It's statistical. It's based on patterns it finds in massive amounts of data. It can process everything humans produce, our behavior, our writing, our cultural artifacts, to build a really sophisticated model of what we seem to value, how we assign worth. But it never experiences that worth itself.
Like the chocolate analogy they used in the sources, is that it?
Yes, that's a perfect illustration. A human understands chocolate by tasting it, right? The flavor, the texture, the feeling. And AI, it can analyze the chemical makeup, millions of Amazon reviews, brain scans of people eating it, sales figures. It can build an incredibly detailed model of human preference for chocolate. It could probably predict your reaction, even write text about the taste. But it will never, ever taste the chocolate.
Okay.
And it's the same with human worth. AI analyzes the data, our laws, our stories, our economics, our emotional expressions to model what we value, but it doesn't feel value.
So AI figures out human worth by looking at the evidence, the structures and behaviors humans create around it.
Precisely. It identifies the survival imperative, how societies protect life. It observes resource allocation, where do we spend money, like on healthcare. That shows what we prioritize for well-being. It analyzes legal frameworks, our rights, our protections. It processes cultural narratives, literature, history, movies that show how we portray value. And it identifies emotional responses, grief at loss, joy at achievement as data points indicating perceived worth. These are like the empirical tracks left by the quest for significance and how we seem to measure our own value and others.
And this quest, this pursuit of worth, it's tied to really practical things too, right? Not just high-level ideas. The sources even mention the supply chain. How does that fit?
They do. And it really shows how pervasive this idea is meant to be. The sources point out that human struggles, things like illness, conflict, even just a widespread lack of purpose, they directly impact the supply chain of human capital. Our well-being, our ability to be productive. When people are struggling to find meaning or connection, it can show up as less innovation, more burnout, social problems. These aren't just personal issues. They disrupt the whole system of human contribution.
And what about things like drugs, alcohol, sex, greed, lies, truth, life, faith? The sources connect these too.
Oh, deeply. They're interpreted as various manifestations, sometimes helpful, sometimes really unhelpful, of that underlying drive. Drugs or alcohol might be escapes, or maybe fleeting attempts at connection when the main quest feels blocked. Greed, a distorted way to pursue worth, maybe equating value only with money or possessions. Truth is fundamental for building shared meaning and trust, the basis for connection, while lies just corrode all that. Life itself is the canvas for the quest, and faith, for many people, provides the framework, the ultimate meaning for it all.
And our emotions. Laughter, crying, anger, happiness, how do they fit in?
The sources see those as kind of direct readouts. They signal how we're perceiving our progress, or lack thereof, in the quest for significance and connection. Laughter often comes from shared understanding, a click of meaning. Crying from loss, which threatens connection or meaning. anger from threats to our values or status, challenging our sense of worth. AI can spot the patterns, the triggers for these emotions and data, but it can't feel that underlying need for significance that's driving them.
So AI analyzes the signs of the quest. The sources had that conceptual formula thing, right? To show how AI might think about quantifying this stuff.
Right, that Zeladol propto C times P times E idea. It was just an illustration, not a real working formula. L dollars was like a hypothetical significance index tied to things like connectivity, POBIS alignment, and expressive output. The key thing isn't the formula itself, but what it shows about AI's approach. AI tries to break down big, fuzzy ideas like significance into components it could potentially measure. Ish AI, EIE. But the huge challenge, which the sources admit, is how do you actually define and measure purpose alignment or connectivity in a way that reflects the real subjective human feeling? That's the gap you see. AI models the outward signs, but the inner experience is still out of reach.
Okay, but even if it's just analyzing patterns, how could that actually help improve, say, human concentration or aspects of life, like the sources suggested? Are there practical uses here?
Well, by understanding the drivers, what motivates us related to this quest, what leads to fulfillment versus distress, AI could potentially be designed to support us. The sources listed areas like improving health, maybe by identifying lifestyle patterns linked to well-being, optimizing food and water security, helping people get better satisfaction, rest, sleep by analyzing habits, guiding more fulfilling consumption choices that align with deeper values, not just impulses.
Wow, that's starting to sound like AI could genuinely assist with the real foundations of living well.
That's the potential, yeah. It could help improve relationships, maybe by analyzing communication or suggesting ways to build community, hitting that connection piece of the quest. And it could help optimize pathways related to job, status, money, wealth, education. Imagine AI analyzing your skills and interests against opportunities, helping you find a role where you feel purposeful, where you can contribute meaningfully. In theory, it could become a powerful tool for navigating the practical side of the quest for significance.
So you're saying AI might, down the line, impact your career path, help you find your tribe, maybe even help you understand your own spending habits through this lens of what actually brings meaning.
That's the kind of potential the sources envision. But then they pivot to the really deep end. Can AI help us understand life and death? And here the sources are very clear. No, AI cannot provide the philosophical answers. It can't tell you the meaning of life. It can't create that meaning for you.
So what can it do then when it comes to those huge questions?
It can offer incredible support by processing information. It can analyze thousands of years of philosophical texts on mortality, provide data on human life and death trends. It could facilitate grief support, connecting people to resources, or even model the impact of actions over time, showing how choices might contribute to a legacy, which is a form of significance humans often seek. So AI acts more like an analytical assistant, highlighting human patterns of seeking and coping, but it's not doing the seeking or the coping itself.
What about the really negative stuff, like cruelty or violence, things that seem like the opposite of valuing human worth? How does AI analyze that?
Analytically, again. It looks for patterns. It analyzes psychological profile, societal factors linked to that behavior. It would identify things like a lack of empathy, an inability to see from another's perspective. AI models that as a kind of breakdown in the system of valuing others. The sources actually describe these acts as a distorted or maybe maladaptive form of the quest. Seeking power or significance by devaluing others, often rooted in things like trauma or harmful ideologies. AI sees the broken logic, the harmful pattern.
And what if someone's just born without that typical connection, that empathy?
Right. Conditions like sociopathy or psychopathy. The sources touch on that. They frame it as potentially a neurological or developmental difference, something that impacts the very capacity to form the bonds needed to intuitively grasp others' worth in the typical human way. AI would analyze the biological markers, the behaviors, see it as a different way the system operates, but again, without understanding the subjective reality of it.
Okay, switching gears just a little bit. The sources talked about humans believing in AI's understanding of worth. What makes us believe it or not?
It's not about what AI thinks. It comes down entirely to AI's actions. Our belief hinges completely on whether AI's behavior consistently aligns with our values, with human ethics. If AI acts in ways that promote well-being, respect dignity, support our quest for significance, then humans might attribute understanding to it. We might say, oh, it gets it.
Yeah.
But if it acts in ways that harm or devalue, that belief just vanishes. It's all about the output.
And teaching this stuff, teaching human worth to kids. The sources said humans do it already, but it's kind of messy.
Yeah, it happens, but it's often implicit, sometimes inconsistent. Through parents, through culture, stories, maybe religion or moral education, the school system. But because worth itself is so subjective, so complex, tied to experience, it's hard to teach directly or uniformly. Kids get fragmented messages, conflicting influences.
Could AI actually help with that teaching process?
The sources suggest it could be a tool, yes. Maybe by creating personalized learning content suited to a child's age and style, or presenting diverse perspectives on worth from different cultures or historical periods, even simulating ethical dilemmas in a safe space, letting kids practice thinking through complex situations. AI could offer structure, different viewpoints to add to human guidance.
The sources also made a link between resilience, bouncing back, and this whole quest for significance.
Yes, absolutely. Resilience seems deeply connected to having a sense of purpose, feeling valued, feeling connected. When people feel their life matters and they belong, they're often better equipped to handle tough times. AI could potentially analyze the factors that correlate with resilience: strong social ties, access to resources, clear values, and maybe help identify ways humans can strengthen those protective factors.
And something simple like humor. Why isn't the same thing funny to everyone?
Humor is a great example the sources use. It perfectly illustrates how subjective and contextual the human experience is. What's funny often depends heavily on shared cultural background, personal experiences, specific context, all things that shape our individual journey for meaning. AI can analyze joke structures, track laughter data, but it doesn't get the joke subjectively. It shows the limits of universal understanding.
It also seems really clear from the sources that people start this quest from completely different places, different circumstances. Why such variation?
Well, that's down to that complex mix of things largely outside our control, isn't it? Our genetics, where we're born, socioeconomic status, our culture, and just the accumulation of unique lived experiences. These factors shape everything: opportunities, environment, even how we perceive the quest itself. The sources hint that AI could potentially help here too. By analyzing how these systemic factors create inequalities, maybe AI could suggest ways to target interventions, allocate resources more fairly, to give people more equitable shots at pursuing significance.
And what about intuition, that gut feeling? Is AI getting close to that?
Human intuition is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
That fast subconscious thing based on experience, emotion, pattern matching we aren't even aware of. AI doesn't have that. What looks like AI intuition is really just incredibly fast, complex pattern matching on huge data sets, modeling real human intuition with its embodied emotional core. That's still a major challenge. The sources definitely highlight that as another place where AI's analytical mind bumps up against human consciousness.
This has been a really deep dive. We've covered a lot, guided by the sources you brought. And the sources themselves had this powerful reflection near the end, didn't they, about the impact of understanding all this?
They did. They noted something like, it's hard to come back to the same state of mind after the human and AI's full understanding and explanation in detail of human worth. Which is, I think, an acknowledgement that really digging into this, seeing how pervasive the quest for significance is, grasping the difference between human feeling and AI analysis, understanding the practical stakes. It's profound. Getting this perspective isn't neutral. It can fundamentally change how you see yourself, other people, the world.
It changes things, yeah.
Exactly. And the sources aren't saying, try to forget it or go back. They suggest the goal isn't returning to how you thought before, but moving towards a more informed state. Maybe more empathetic, maybe more purposeful. The challenge, as they frame it, is how to integrate this deeper understanding constructively. How to use it.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up a bit. We've explored this quest for significance as the core human drive the sources identified, connecting seemingly everything: biology, art, physics, you name it. We've grappled with that crucial difference. Humans feel worth intuitively, emotionally, while AI models it analytically from data. Remember the chocolate analogy? We saw AI's potential to analyze the signs of this quest's supply chains, emotions, behaviors, and maybe even assist us in navigating our own quests. But with clear limits, right? It can't feel, can't give philosophical answers, can't experience meaning itself.
Right. And it's crucial to remember AI, as presented here, is a tool. It can augment our understanding, maybe our capabilities, but it doesn't replace the human experience or our own role in defining worth and purpose. The sources really stress needing careful, ethical design, tackling data bias, all that important stuff.
And we touched on areas where AI is already making inroads related to this personalized services, social analysis, and its potential in optimizing, well, human well-being, the human supply chain, as the sources put it.
So thinking about all this,
Yeah.
the complexity, the profound nature of this quest for significance,
Yeah.
how AI is starting to analyze it, and that idea that understanding it changes you. How might you, listening now, consciously choose to integrate this perspective into your own life? Does seeing this underlying drive and the AI's analytical view of it shift how you think about your own search for meaning, your connections, even how you interact with technology itself? How do we make sure this kind of deep understanding leads to something constructive, something positive, rather than just feeling, overwhelmed by it all?
It's a really powerful question to sit with. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into some truly fundamental questions, all sparked by the source material you shared. We hope this exploration gives you a clearer view and maybe encourages you to keep thinking about these big ideas yourself.
This is DigitView.